Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 401 Access Denied podcast, brought to you by Delinea. I'm the host of the show, Joe Carson, Chief Security Scientist and Advisory, CISO. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're always excited about bringing you interesting ideas, things that can really help you to secure your organization become more resilient. I've got a fantastic guest who's returning today for this very special episode. So, Frank, welcome to the show. Maybe for the audience, do you want to give the audience a bit of background about yourself? You've been on before, but sometimes it's just good to kind of give the audience a bit of an update.
Oh, absolutely, Joe, and happy to be on again, as you mentioned. Frank Vukovits, also Chief Security Scientist with Delinea. Been a part of Delinea now, hard to believe it, Joe, 6+ months. Previously worked for a company by the name of FastPath that Delinea acquired earlier this year. FastPath was a security audit compliance provider of solutions in the business application space. So think internal threats and frauds in your accounting and financial systems. Was there for 9 years, and I've been doing security audit compliance and cyber and identity security now for 30+ years, and love chatting with folks like Joe and sharing knowledge and experiences. And we got some neat stuff to talk about what we've seen in 2024 and what's going on in 2025 for sure. So happy to be here for the holiday edition in the year review.
Absolutely. And that's the exciting thing is just for the audience, just to give the audience a bit of perspective, which is, great, is that this is the holiday special. This is the Christmas edition of the podcast. And just, we've been doing this for 4 years now at Delinea. And the amazing thing is that this is only possible because we have such great listeners who come in and they listen to the episodes, they subscribe and provide feedback and suggestions for future episodes. So we've been doing this for 4 years. And it means that, this is episode 102. And over that time, we've had 400,000 plus listens, over 100 different guests on the show, which I think it's around 100+ hours of content and thought leadership and different amazing insights. So it's an honor to be able doing the podcast for so long. It's just fantastic, and to have this special edition with yourself, Frank. I'm really excited. So for the episode today, we're going to take a look back. And it's always interesting because it's always good to kind of take a point in time a health check about what's been happening. So we're going to take a look back of what's been happening in 2024, some of the top trends, some of the insights and lessons learned, and then also a little bit of insights and predictions for what's coming in 2025. So Frank, what for you, what's been some of the most notable events during this year? What were some of the lessons and topics that you thought was kind of quite surprising?
So I think a couple of things. Obviously, AI is out there, and we'll get into AI and how it's being used and the evolution of it, and cybersecurity, both from a defense perspective and trying to protect things, but also how the threat actors are using it. One thing I know, and I've talked about this some in the past, earlier this year, just ransomware and how ransomware now is really being used. It used to be, from a ransomware perspective, I'm going to, as a threat actor, come in, I'm just going to take over your systems and shut them down. Just might as well put a sign up, out of business. There's nothing you can do to run the business. It was literally just, it's in the old days when I was started off, we had a mainframe. It's like unplugging the mainframe. Can't do anything.
Yep. It's literally shutting the business down and making their systems unavailable, which was the most common for the last, 4 or 5 years.
Right. But now they're starting to think, what? We can make some money that way. Yeah. Because then you got to write a check or just send me Bitcoin to turn the company back on. What instead, if I go out and say, you have some really valuable data, maybe you're a healthcare provider, and I know there's some patient data out there that I can get a lot of money for in the black market, in the dark web. And now I'm going to come in, and I'm not going to shut you down, but I'm going to take some of your data and either hold it hostage or just say, I got a copy of it. Do you want it out there? And how important it is to the reputation of your company that now your customer information is being exposed. So it's a flip. It's not shutting you down. It's saying, what's most valuable to you? And I think that tactic is really unique because, one, I would argue it might be a little bit tougher in the past when they're shutting down all the systems. So what it takes to go in now, if you have one database that's not secure and you can grab, let's say, this healthcare data out of one database, easier to get to, less effort, and yet you might be able to actually get more money in some cases out of them, or at least a comparable level of money. So I think that's one trend, this change in ransomware in terms of all of a sudden, what are they really trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. I think, when I look at that, absolutely. When we did the State of Ransomware research report earlier this year, that highlighted one of the interesting things from that report. And we'll just make sure that the audience will get access to that report in the show notes. So that report, we also highlight, the shift from the traditional type of encryption-based ransomware to much more of an extortion-based.
Yes.
So extortionware has become the big trend, and it overtook in the past year traditional ransomware. And I think one of the big things was, and I think it's really down to having better security
Yep.
and better strategy, because organizations got much better at having ransomware resilient backup and recovery strategy.
Right. Yes.
And because of that, because the attackers start realizing that, we just encrypt and we don't have anything else, the victim will have a way to recover without paying the ransom.
Yep.
So they get into what other ways can we get ransom? And it was multiple things. It's gaining credentials and selling on to other criminals. It's getting sensitive data and then threatening to disclose it in the public or in the dark web and sell it onwards. And that becomes another method that doesn't depend on the backup and recovery strategy. And it also might reveal intellectual property. It might be data which is persistent, like you said, healthcare data. It could be financial data, things that, is static data that hasn't, it's historical and very damaging. So absolutely, I have seen extortionware becoming a massive factor this year, and it will continue. It means that, having a good backup and recovery strategy is great, but we still need to make sure that we encrypt the data, that we lock down the access, the privileges, the authorization, authentication to the data even better as well, because you're absolutely right. If attackers continue to take advantage of stolen and weak credentials, they will continue to be able to threaten with extortion.
Yeah. And let's not kid ourselves. There's money out there to be made.
Yeah. And just to give you an example, there was the one earlier this year. It was the CDK, which is the car dealership systems. They paid $25 million in the summer in a ransom payment. And just to give you a bit of perspective, as you mentioned, cryptocurrency is the common, value or monetary kind of focus that criminals look to. And that $25 million in June or July this year is now $50 million today.
Right. Yeah,
because of the value of cryptocurrency has increased significantly, and they're not selling it all. They're holding it in the cryptocurrencies. They're laundering it in those exchanges. So you just think of that. They got 25 million in July. It's worth 50 million today, and that's just sitting and waiting because of the value of cryptocurrency is also continued to rise.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's scary.
What other things have you been seeing this year? What's have also been of interest?
So obviously AI, and we've been talking for a while now about how AI allows for advanced tools to be out there and so easy to get a hold of, and they can do more things. Just the processing power, I like to say, of the cloud, even that I can run scripts now. I can find these scripts easier, but now the scripts are more intelligent, and the access to the tools for threat actors obviously continues to increase. But I want to combine two together, maybe. So the evolution of AI is great, gives us a better way to protect and try to stop the threats, right? And we can use AI to look for anomalies and go through all this detective and shut things down, and be proactive and preventative where we're looking for certain signals and using AI to say, you know what, those three signals don't line up. I'm going to stop you before you even get into the network from a maybe authentication perspective. Maybe I'm going to stop you once you're authenticated from being authorized to do things because the data signals don't match up. So that's helpful, but at the same time, it's so easy to get a hold of the tools, and the tools are so more powerful with AI. But the other thing that's scary is the threat actors and state-sponsored cyber work that's going on. And I was recently at the Gartner IAM Summit, actually this week in Dallas, in the States, and they were telling some stories about deep fakes, and sat through a session where someone said there's a country out there, and I'm not going to name it, but we know state-sponsored hacking apps, and I read about it on the news too, then later in the week, where they're going out and using deep fake to set up new employees through the hiring process. It's all virtual. And you're talking to someone in an interview like you and me, that people can question, is that really Joe Carson there? Or is that a deep fake image of him?
Absolutely.
And they're using AI to in the interview process, and you have a nice resume, and these companies are hiring them. And the trick then is they get a company laptop, and it's get shipped to an address that you think is where this employee works. It's not where it works. Think of a server farm in the day. It's basically a laptop farm where someone's receiving all these laptops that are provisioned with the access.
Just plugging them in. They're plugging them in, making them available remotely.
And they're managed remotely from these countries. And now those laptops, because the position they're hired into, have access to do all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
So you're applying AI technology from the deepfake perspective to get into the interview process and get the device in. And now you're using AI technologies then once you get into the systems that go do really nefarious things. And it's a huge problem. So deepfake is a problem, and it has been a problem, but I never thought about it from a way to get into.
Absolutely. I think for me, I think that the big one this year was the KnowBe4 disclosure. I think, that really highlighted it because KnowBe4 was one of the organizations. It was a security company who hires lots of amazing security industry professionals. And they actually disclosed, I think it was back in September, October timeframe, where they disclosed that they actually went through the process and they actually hired one of those individuals who had passed the background check, actually had went through the interview process. And it was actually stolen identity. It came down to they had actually stolen identity. They'd used AI to modify the images to look like that stolen identity. And they went through it and they got hired. And it wasn't until all of a sudden that machine, once it got plugged in and started getting all the malware and it started creating lots of alarms and alerts, and then it was detected. And this is continuing. You're absolutely right with using AI and using deep fakes and machine learning in order to really, manipulate. And I think the latest reports was that, in North Korea, they've got like an army of 10,000 people.
Yes, I read that.
That's basically doing that. Actually, one is they're getting paid. Actually, and quite well. Some of the salaries I've seen of those individuals getting paid quite a nice salary. At the same time, they're using that for insider threats and stealing intellectual property, getting access to those organizations as well. And some of them in very critical, high-profile roles as well. So absolutely, the combination of those things definitely is alarming. And it means that organizations, even if people pass the background checks, you want to make sure. It really gets into sometimes we do want to meet the people in person.
Exactly.
Or at least have the ability to have an intermediary meet that person and verify their identity, really. And this is something that we had to find a way to minimize that, because it is going to be a growing risk. As the reports say, there's a 10,000 person, and it's not going to stop there. That's going to continue. We always had that, the quietly quitting scenario, which people were all taking on multiple jobs during COVID. This, is another scenario which is escalating further from that. And I think one of the things you mentioned around AI, I think for me, there's three major components of AI. One is that organizations, absolutely, we're seeing a lot of empowerment from AI and tools and solutions that really enhance security, which is great, fantastic. And I think that's the area that we've seen accelerate the most. And as the second point you mentioned is around the lowering of the bar for criminals, meaning that they don't need to be as sophisticated. There's lots of AI GPTs out there that have the guardrails removed that are used for malicious activities. I've seen it being used for phishing translations and phishing email creation. I've seen it used for data analysts, and the attackers can analyze data much faster than they would have done previously. And I think the third thing is that organizations are using a lot more AI-enabled solutions, and therefore we really need to make sure that people are only authorized and should have access to the algorithms to make modifications. Those who need to have the right access to, for example, query and use the algorithms, and sometimes those are shared, the AI agents, which allows these algorithms to be run on the edge. Then we get into the training models and the data that's used for those training models. So it's not even, we're seeing that kind of the escalation that, yes, AI is being used and we got a lot more enabled. It is lowering the bar for criminals. We need to protect the access to it, much more critical than ever. To me, sometimes it's two things. It's still the human identities that are using AI and making sure that only authorized people have access to make changes. And then the second thing is that we're doing a lot of integration, again, APIs and AI APIs in the background that also need to be protected. So I think this really raises the importance for making sure that authentication, authorization, and governance and the highest identity security for AI-enabled systems. And organizations really, because those systems have a lot more intelligence. And the more intelligence they get, the more sensitive that information becomes, and therefore they need to be protected. And only those who should have the ability to query those systems should be actually, that means the security controls need to be very, very good. And that's something that organizations need to prioritize.
And
what's your thoughts around that? Is that
No, I think the whole governance and securing AI in 2025 is going to continue to be a hot topic. And I'm starting to see a lot of it the last 6 months. People say, AI is going to allow us to do this, this, or this, including in the security space. I mean, AI helps our products out, and that's great. but how companies are using AI themselves and the governance around it. Lots
AI
of customers,
policy,
and what you're
AI
doing,
policies. Yeah.
exactly. What are you doing with my data? Do you have a statement of responsible use around AI and securing the AI tools? So it's sort of funny to think about we're using AI to help provide security as security tools, but we're also reusing AI, and how are those tools secure? From a data loss prevention perspective, lots of companies now are starting to say, how are my own employees using a chat GPT or some AI feature that's built into a tool and no
And is it
clue?
the free? Is it the free version that
Yeah,
means the data that you're putting in is going to be used for training?
exactly. It's fitting. And are you training with customer data?
Yep.
It's that part. I think people have to be really careful when they say, oh, we're using AI. How are you using it? How are you, the governance around it? Not just for your company's own use, but if it's what data it's reading, and answering that for your customer base. And then for those companies like Delinea that are in the security space, you need to have your ducks in a row about how your tools are using AI technology. Yeah, it's providing a service to protect. We get that and secure, but it's by default that doesn't imply that it's secure itself. You have to provide evidence of that. So I think that's going to be big. And just the governance around AI. And the other thing I would say, which is a bit scary, again, at the Gartner event this week, I forget the name of the company, but they said a company went out there, did a study and put in some chat rooms or discussion boards, like 5 certificates or 5 scripts that the way they worded them, they knew they could be picked up by the threat actors on the dark web, as these are things to go use immediately. They put them out there. The servers they hit, 10 seconds from when they were posted to when they were used. Now, given they didn't get them, it was just a test, 10 seconds. And I'm sitting there thinking, is that because there's all many people logged in monitoring these discussion boards, or is there AI tools running behind the scenes to pick up on stuff like that, looking for certain terms, and then immediately dumping it into a hacking tool? So it's just so much data the threat actors can get at now.
Absolutely.
It's just scary.
It's integration from things like, showdown searches,
Yes.
plugging those directly into AI algorithms, and then automatically running the campaigns right afterwards. It's the full automation. It's really, automation on steroids, which is really what kind of
Automation
is
of
happening.
steroids, I like that. Yeah.
So, and one of the things that was interesting. So, absolutely, in that I've seen areas where, for example, people adding chatbots and stuff into, or transcription bots, agents into things like meetings, and then, the transcription of those meetings then going off into third parties. So it's really getting it to the point where it's not just about securing and having the policies and governance, but also about knowing what tools are actually have AI enabled in them, and do you want them enabled or not? And also, is it going into your own private kind of, let's say, data lake, or is it going to a third-party data lake?
Right.
Do you want all of your company meetings being recorded and then transcribed and then used for learning and then been held in a third-party data center? So that's really where you get into having AI policies so critical. So you understand about what's acceptable and what can also audit and inventory about what systems actually have it enabled and that are being used.
Yeah. The auditor in me would tell you, trying to keep track of all those AI tools that you're using, those bots you have installed, and who really knows exactly what they do behind the scenes. You might say it records everything in a Zoom call or a Teams call. Okay,
absolutely.
That's what you see is the output, but what's really going on behind the scenes? What level of access that to have? Where's it pushing the data out to? Where's it stored? And where that data is at? What other tools have access to it to read in for other purposes?
What some of the other trends I've seen as well is around definitely, the transition to cloud as well continues to be a massive push, and organizations are still struggling to get, and they end up with too many stacks across multiple clouds and hybrid clouds and SaaS. And they end up too many differences in security controls. So we've seen a massive drive towards consolidation, to move towards platforms and API and interoperability. Is that something you've seen, and any thoughts around that?
Absolutely. And obviously cloud's been out there for a long time now, but I would call it silos or pockets, where a company goes out and the accounting department requires a SaaS solution over here in the cloud. And then the HR department's another one. And then next we know the IT help desk is getting a new solution to do support and ticketing into the cloud. 2 of them are AWS and one's running Microsoft Azure, let's say. And yet I'm the CISO or CIO, and I want to deploy consistent security frameworks and principles across to secure all my assets. And guess what? We still run some stuff on-prem. So you need to have some type of platform, and this is where the industry's going, that allows you to have access to these multi-cloud hybrid environments. So whether it's on-prem, hybrid, cloud, or full SaaS in one place. And I know it's a marketing term, single pane of glass dashboard, but let's not kid ourselves. There's so much data and signals we have to look at. Trying to look at them from multiple sources and then consolidate them versus one place to begin with. I think you're going to see that trend continue in the security space with trying to move things onto a platform, because with all the APIs, you can get the data and let's surface it in one platform. And now let's begin to really manage things accordingly. And that's, again, because of AI, we can do more, right?
And it reduces complexity.
Exactly.
That's one of the things is that I've seen the biggest, if we look at the pain points that I've had lots of discussion throughout the year with, so many CISOs and IT leaders and security professionals. And the challenge, what's causing security incidents is over complexity, is too many solutions, too many different environments, too many different inconsistencies, too many tools to try to do multiple things. And what they're really driving to is how to reduce that, how to reduce complexity, how to simplify things. And that's why getting into this, where you've got platforms, that have strong APIs and integrations, that have good interoperability and good orchestration. To your point is that allowing, and what we, one of the things is a lot of that reduces the, skills gap as well, because you have, more focused, more people that, can specialize in those areas as well. And it's, it helps organizations do more automation, leverage AI much more, and do more with less as well. So for me, absolutely, this is an area that I think is going to continue. And I think it's an area that many organizations will look for that platform consolidation, definitely to take away a lot of the pain from complexity in that multi-hybrid cloud scenario.
The skills gap you talk about is not going away. There's two things going on. Skills gap, not enough cybersecurity professionals to keep up with the threat actors. And two, the ones that we have in the profession are getting burnt out from long hours and fighting battles they seem that they never can actually get over that.
And we're always in transition of technical change. The technology we were using 5 years ago was not the same as what we're using today. And therefore, it's important that, if you need to invest in skills and training for the existing staff. If we don't invest enough time in training and knowledge to the employees, is that skills gap will continue to increase. So it's not just about getting people into the industry, but it's about making sure that the existing people we have continue to develop their skills over time to stay modern and stay current with the technology. That's one of the things is that, we talk a bit about, the cloud challenges, is that we have less people skilled in cloud than we do on premise. Because of course, a lot of times you're handing that over to third parties. And that skills gap is a knowledge gap. So I think it's two areas. I think we sometimes we heavily focus on the skills gap, but it also is that knowledge and the gap on developing employees to be up to date with the current tool sets.
Because you need as many resources as you can. You're not going to unlimited resources. You have to develop those people, because guess what? If you're not developing them, there's someone else out there going to hire them away that is going to develop them. And
Absolutely.
then
So one of the other things I'd like to cover as well is any major updates in governance and compliance this year. Has there any been new kind of moves? Has there been new regulations out, new compliance efforts? Anything interesting?
Obviously DORA. It's been talked a lot over in the UK. I think I read a stat the other day that in the United States, of the top 48 companies GDP wise, we're the only one that doesn't have a countrywide data privacy act. So where you have GDPR and the like.
You've got it from a state level, because CCPA, there's other states are doing it.
Colorado has it, Virginia has it, California CCPA, but eventually that's going to come. I think, DORA is the one a lot of people are talking about. My old neck of the woods with dealing with SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley or JSOX. That's going to continue. Even the Corporate Reform Act in the UK that was dead. And then they went back and said, well, we're not going to have the fines with it. Companies in the UK I've worked with are starting to follow some of the guidelines in it anyways. Bottom line is folks are figuring out, and they've known this, but they're taking more action, that some of these regulations on the corporate governance side related to finance side of things, strong internal controls are important, public or private, even if you don't have if you're not publicly traded in the US. The concepts of SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, still apply to secure your financial systems. Same with over in the UK. Maybe you're not listed, but the Corporate Reform Act, the ideas and the controls that was suggested are still important. So, and I still think data privacy is huge. And I think companies are missing out a little bit looking at the data privacy regulation based on the country they may be domiciled and headquartered, and not knowing the regulations could care less about that, because the privacy regulations are to protect their citizens that own their personal data. So it's where the citizen resides, which could be in your customer database, could be in your employee database. That you need to focus in on what country that's from, not where you do business or where you're headquartered at.
Absolutely.
It's challenging. Regulations are only getting worse from a volume perspective. They're not going back.
If you're in finance or healthcare, it's or government, it's the amount of areas that you have to focus on. And that's why one thing is I've had numerous auditors on, and they always say that one of the mistakes organizations make is that security is part of their compliance program, or actually compliance should be part of your security program.
Yes.
So sometimes it's getting the right strategy.
Yes.
Because ultimately, if you do security with basically understanding about the overlap in a lot of the compliance regulations, you'll be able to meet them much more seamlessly and much more easier without that friction created. So absolutely. And there will be many more to come. I'm expecting the world to kind of look at AI as well, because the EU has already got the EU AI Act. There's DORA, as you mentioned. There's the Data Resiliency Act, or Digital Resiliency Act. So there's tons of different kind of coverages, and it's just going to continue and become challenging. I want to move into a little bit about insights and predictions for this year. So any thoughts? What do you expect to come in 2025? What's the expectations there?
Lots of things. Obviously, AI can continue to be really relevant. We talked about that. I think we may well see some of the tools, unfortunately, threat actors have, and the power they have, some new tool come out that we don't have a good answer for. That's one thing that would scare me a little bit. And I think, too, the continued explosion of machine identities or non-human identities, NHI, there's stats out there. There's 40 to 50 times machine or non-human identities for every one human identity. We get so focused in the security world about people and human identities. And with the rise of AI and bots and RPA and just the evolution of technology, the access that those non-human identities required to support business functions, they're critical. We've got to do a better job of managing those identities, because if we don't know what those non-human identities have access to do, we can't secure. And power technology with AI, especially with that, I think is going to be the biggest challenge in 2025 is how do we secure the non-human identities, and even inventorying them to know what they can do, watching them and securing them. And I think that's
especially when they're behind the scenes, and it's the harder part to secure as well. The human sides, we can put pass keys in place, we can do biometrics, we can put multi-factor authentication in place, we can record the sessions, we can rotate the credentials and passwords, we can do all of single sign-on federated identity. There's lots of things on the authentication side, which makes it possible, but it is more challenging on the non-human side, or the machine identities. I prefer to call it non-human because it's my term. I've given you so the years, but it is the harder thing to do, but it is the more riskier thing when it's not done right.
Yes.
And if you're not kind of maintaining asset inventory, all of the API accounts, all of the service accounts, applications running in the background, integrations, cloud, automation, AI agents. If you're kind of going through all of those, then absolutely you end up becoming, the risk increases of the risk to organizations. And the damage when those accounts are compromised is even more severe as well.
It more severe, can happen quicker. And again, you may not even know it's happening.
Absolutely. So for me, what's one of the things that for me, I was at the news with Google Willow. I don't know who the Google Willow quantum chip, which basically, they released some of the benchmarks that they conducted, and it was quite shocking. Where they were able to basically crack a key challenge. That would take basically, something around, I think it was traditional computers, that it would take 10 septillion years. 10 septillion, which is 10 to the power of 25. Which is mind-boggling to have that number of zeros after. And their Willow chip was able to do that within 5 minutes. And that just shows you the acceleration and the pace. Like when we talk about quantum, we're almost like 5 years, 10 years time from now. And for me, it's not just about the number of qubits; it's about the quality of qubits, which is also a major factor. Which they didn't talk about. They talked about the number, but they didn't talk about the quality, which for me was kind of missing in the news announcement. But that shows that it's getting closer to No More Secrets, to the movie Secrets. Sneakers was my favorite. Sneakers, Robert Redford. And it gets into really kind of where we're getting to the current encryption. That means that we have to move faster. If that's where the Willow chip is today, that means from a data protection and encryption level. And that's, of course, why we at Delinea have done basically the quantum safe capability into our own products. So they're already ready for those types of scenarios. So what was your thoughts around the announcement? Did you have any perspective on that?
We were talking about dinner the other night, myself and David McNeely and Dimitri, and first thing went through our minds is, well, that's cracking. Can they crack the algorithms and the like for Bitcoin? And all of a sudden, Bitcoin's not secure. All the bad guys and gals that are loving the fact they can now maybe from a will perspective use that to crack your systems, but then the ransomware perspective of what they want ransom to be paid in can be cracked. What are they going to do?
In the cryptocurrency, it's all one-way hashes. So probably in cryptocurrency would be more the wallets, the protection of the wallets. I think that's the concern versus the actually
the protection of the wallets. That's right.
The protection of the wallets, where you get into is on the exchanges as well.
The idea is like this technology is going to allow them maybe to do more things we don't want them to do, but then how are they going to get paid to keep it secure? But I think, forget about Moore's Law, when every 7 years or what have you. That's when I was reading the article about the Willow chip, we just mind-boggling. And yet the technology is moving so quick. The next Willow chip we'll hear about it in 2025, and it'll probably be more powerful.
Absolutely. I think we're getting closer to the point where that how we protect data and how we do encryption is going to evolve very quickly. This news means that in 2025 we have to think about how to act much faster, rather than saying it's coming in the future. I've heard different terms, 10, 15 years, but at that pace, what Google announced.
Yeah. No, I remember
the pace is quickening.
I remember being at a conference a year ago, and they were talking about password cracking and quantum computing, and we're still got 5-10 years before something even to be that concerned about. And then
absolutely,
if they've known the Willow chip was coming out and the stats behind it, that 5-10 year window would have been shrunk, and that was only a year ago. And they're we got some time. We have time, but not as much as we thought probably before this week.
Absolutely. And the other area for me, I think, my final kind of big thing for 2025 is going to be around identity theft. I think for me, the acceleration that we've seen, with AI, with deepfakes, with machine learning, with all of the information that's out there. And I will say that we as, society are putting more of our DNA digitally into the public internet. And with a couple of minutes of your voice and audio and your video, a deepfake can be created to to what we talked about earlier, such as people hiring for jobs under, basically stolen identities, or doing meetings, pretending to be somebody else on that meeting. It's getting to a point where the quality is so impressive and so hard to tell the difference. I've even got to the point where I've actually started using safe words with people, that I trusted, that are that if I have a phone call from someone, I'm like, it's an emergency or asking for money, and you're like, okay, what's the safe word? It's, something that you're not basically digitally kept online. It's something that you exchange in person. So I think that's one of the things we're going to have to really, kind of in 2025, identity theft, which means, going back to the digital authentication and governance, is going to be crucial for organizations, but definitely kind of also integrating that and working with the alarming rise of deepfakes.
For sure. I mean, on the finance side, we're spend a lot of time, the old trick of talking to the CFO. It's out of the office, and you get in their email system and send an email from the CFO saying, hey, I'm on a meeting here in San Francisco. Can you wire some money? Those days are gone. Now, maybe the CFO is going to, quote, call you on the phone, or it's going to send you a conversation with them on Teams and look at them videos. They asked me, that's got to be right.
And the thing is that with if they've stolen their identity and they've got enough of their kind of style, from the internet, is that they can actually make it so that even not just sounds like them and it looks like them, but also the actually style of the person's communication, the manner, they're actually kind of personality is also accurate as well. And that's alarming.
Yeah, and I would think between the two of us, there's so much recorded audio and video out there, so it would not take much for someone to go out and record a podcast show and just send
To
us,
be
and
to,
it would look like you and me talking.
to be honest, I mean, there is enough of us,
Yep.
out there
Yep.
that we could literally use AI and deepfakes and machine learning to take it and just automatically create
Yes,
future podcasts.
exactly. We are not doing that today, by the way,
Just to be,
folks.
this is a real in person,
Yes. Yeah.
real actually
Yeah.
human, not
Yeah.
non AI. This is human
Yes.
human created podcast,
Exactly.
which I think is important because the machine created ones, they lose empathy and they lose kind of the foresight vision type of thing, and the creativity, because they're based on historical data. So
Yes.
I think that's one of the things is that I think somebody mentioned that is the frontal cortex that the AI does not have.
Yeah.
So therefore,
Yeah.
that's what they're lacking.
Yeah.
And it was interesting thing was one of the just fun mentions that earlier this week I heard somebody mention that what AI is like, which I thought was quite funny, was that it's like, have you ever played Super Mario Kart?
Yep.
And what AI does is that actually enables humans to go faster, which is what their mention was, which I thought was an interesting term. And he mentioned that it's like in Mario Kart, it's like, when you get the mushroom
Yep.
and you can go faster in Mario Kart. He says the AI is just like a mushroom in Mario Kart. It makes us go faster. So I thought it was a great analogy. I thought it was fantastic. So
sometimes you're going fast, though. You can't always see what you're passing.
absolutely.
Learn from it. And next thing you know, when things slow down a bit, like what just happened, and you have gaps and weaknesses that can be exploited.
Anything you would like to leave the audience with? Any resources that you would point to from this year that would, for the audience, if they want to go and learn about some of the things this year, or what they should plan for next year? What would
one thing you talked about, new regulations, like the new NIST cybersecurity framework.
Yep.
CFS 2.0 came out this year. If we have folks listening out there that maybe are from smaller companies and haven't done a lot around this, is a little bit worried, you want some frameworks, a place to go follow, to go look at free content, that's a good place to start. There's some organizations out there, the Center for Internet Security, SANS organization. I've talked about SANS before, but the NIST standards, I think there's lots of resources out there to help guide you, and it's still a crawl, walk, run approach. You still eat the elephant one bite at a time. Yes, this is scary stuff, but ultimately, if you're trying to secure your company, you got to identify what's most critical from a resource perspective. Do some type of assessment, what data is most valuable, and you build processes and controls and tools to secure those first. And don't get caught up in all the shiny balls and this technology that's out there. What does your company need? And what frameworks are out there from your government or just the identity security industry in general to help you follow, because you're not starting from scratch with this. And I think that would be, if I was thinking about like New Year's resolutions, I want the CFS 2.0 and start there and see where my company's at compared to that. And then words.
Yeah, one additional one I'd recommend for the audience, we released earlier this summer, was the identity security in the age of AI as well.
Yep.
So definitely from a kind of a research perspective, definitely recommend going and reading through that, at least to kind of get an idea, to prepare and kind of see where you as an organization kind of fit with your peers on that research as well.
Yeah.
Frank, it's been awesome having you on as always. I really enjoy the conversations, and for the audience out there, how would the audience stay in contact with you? What's the best way to reach out?
So I'm on Twitter at Vukovits. So I just changed my name now. You just see Frank in the bottom. LinkedIn, and then I don't mind giving my email address out because it's out there in the public domain a lot, but frank.vukovits@delinea.com as well. Best way to track me down. I know you put some links. I'll put my last name back in there now again. But yeah, pretty easy to find me. Very unusual last name. Let's just put it that way. Yes.
Fantastic. I think for the audience, we really wish, that you have a fantastic holidays, time off, and spend it with your families and, your nearest friends, and stay safe over the holidays. It's always a period with the, attacks do increase, and there's a lot of threats out there. So be safe. Hopefully some of the things you've learned in this episode today will give you some new ideas about, what resolutions to make going into 2025, and also some of the lessons from this year as well. So everyone, stay safe out there. Have a great holidays. Thanks for being one of our many listeners. Thanks for being, again, a second-time guest on the episode. Stay safe. Take care. Tune in to the 401 Access Tonight podcast. every 2 weeks, made possible by Delinea. And again, everyone, see you in the next year. And hopefully it'll be something that's will have a fantastic, enjoyable, and safe